Hi, and welcome to Wonderful Women podcast. I hope everybody's listening and that you share this podcast far and wide and click on subscribe. That would be really lovely of you. I am absolutely honoured, delighted and excited to be joined today by the wonderful Melissa Amos, who is the most incredible, I think, spiritual leader. She'll go, oh, Susan, but she absolutely is. Melissa helps people develop their own spirituality and find the path that they were put on this earth to follow. She is an absolute expert on Akashic records. I had a reading with her not that long ago, and honestly, it's just added to the beautiful tapestry of my life and my previous lives. It's helped me understand who I am. And I was actually going through Melissa's website last night thinking, what am I going to book next? So there will be links in the description, in the podcast description, on how to work with this wonderful woman. But for today, we're going to be chatting, and we're going to be chatting through this season's question, which is, Melissa, can you tell me of a time or an event or even a challenge in your life that completely changed the trajectory of your life? Got stuck on that word. So, how are you, my darling?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for inviting me in that lovely introduction.
My pleasure. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about you that I have missed out there?
I'm sure it will come up, but I do every morning just feel blessed that I really live a life that I feel like I've designed, and not in a way that's, oh, well, it has to look like this or be like this, but that's gone through this flow of my life and my life path and my life purpose and my joy that's just led me to being able to help so many people. So I never underestimate how blessed I am for that.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Well, I feel very blessed to have you with us today. So have you had a think about the question? I know before we came on, I was saying, I don't know what next season's question is going to be, but this question, there is not one single woman who has said, oh, I can't think of an answer. So I am dying to know what yours is, what your story is.
I found it interesting when you asked that question, because so often, especially when we're in these spiritual realms, there's something very dramatic that's happened. There's something that, often a tragedy or an illness or over a loss, or, something's often happened that has led us to ask the question, what is more? And for me, it was actually very different. So I'd love to start this off, and I've not listened to the other ladies that have joined you yet, and I'd be interested to hear what their stories are. But I want to start this by saying it doesn't always have to be that the life that you are here to live doesn't have to be brought on by some big dramatic movement.
I agree. I completely agree with that. Yeah.
So for me, I grew up with a grandma who was a hypnotherapist and a thought field therapist and a neuro-linguistic practitioner, which back then was definitely not the norm. I mean, there's many more of us here now. And so I always had this openness to how the mind works. And I was quite scientific about it. I liked things to be, I like to know and understand the whats and the whys and the hows and the wheres it works. With things like NLP and even with hypnotherapy, I could get my hands on that and grasp that. But it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s and I was working at a job which I equally loved and hated at the same time. It was a very male-dominated industry. It was very high pressure. It was very glamorous, but, and I did spend my days in fact, talking to some amazing people, which was the bit of the job I loved.
Yeah.
But with that came a lot of stress, came a lot of pressure, and I was feeling it not, with my behaviors, but also in my body. I was very tense, and, I was aching and all of this, which led me to meet this wonderful lady called Claire, who I booked in for a massage one day. And she'd come every few weeks and give me a massage, and that really helped. But there was something different about her. She wasn't just touching my body and kind of, those quite straight massages that you had. There was something else about her which I didn't understand. And one day she put her hands over my head, and I had this feeling of, it was almost like my head was filling up with this amazing comfort and light, and it was just becoming full. And then all of a sudden, it was as if she'd pulled a mask off, and everything that was inside just disappeared. All of the heaviness, all of the weight, all of the, conversation that was happening in my mind just disappeared. Yeah. And her hands were probably on my head for 2 minutes.
Amazing. I know that feeling. It's so beautiful.
And you know what I'm going to say? I think afterwards I was a bit dumbfounded, like, what on earth was that? And she said, oh, it was Reiki, like really like nonchalant. She was just like, oh, it's just Reiki. So I was really intrigued. I'd heard of Reiki before, but I'd never experienced it. And so I booked her in for a session, and half the time I was like, wow, this is magic. Half the time I was like, I should have booked a massage. But because I love that touch.
Yeah.
But what I soon began to realize is that in the days that followed a Reiki treatment, where I would be in these very high pressure environments, I wasn't jumping into the responses that I used to do. And it wasn't until one of the guys at work was, this situation happened, and this thing I was meant to deliver had been delayed, and it was a massive contract. And he just said, oh, it's not going to be here in time. And I went, oh, okay, that's fine, I'll sort it out. And he was like, you okay, Melissa? I was thinking, am I okay? I don't know. Like, this isn't normally my response. Normally it feels, like the world's about to shut down on me. Yeah. And it led me to realize that this little thing that I was having every now and then out of curiosity was actually really influencing my life.
Yeah, absolutely. It is so beautiful, isn't it? And I think everyone will remember the first time they had Reiki, and the ripple effects are phenomenal. And I mean, I know the situation you worked in, and sales dominated, beautiful product. And I practically mirrored you, but many years, many years older. And God, if something goes wrong with a delivery, or that you're supposed to hand over, it's the end of the world, isn't it?
And this was so I was a salesperson at Mercedes-Benz, and this was the most expensive car that I'd ever sold to the date. It was £110,000, this car. And it wasn't ready, and we'd made a promise, and I didn't like to break my promises, but it was fine. And you know what, it was all fine. And rather than, and this is the way things work, because actually when I contacted the customer and he went, oh, do you know what, actually today is a bit full on for me, but later on in the week's better. And I was like, okay,
great.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to melt down, cry, go, oh, but
yeah,
it's energy, beautiful, beautiful energy, isn't it?
Well, it's things like that I think help me realize that we can't control everything. And obviously where there are things in our control, it's important to take that. But most of the time we can just surrender to that. And in that moment when that news came, I was like, okay. It wasn't even conscious. It wasn't even, oh, I've got a choice and I can either do this or do that. It was just there and easy. And in that moment, I thought there's more to this than it's just relaxing my body.
Amazing.
But then it was sometime later. So I'd had these back issues issues since I was a child, really, I remember having treatment from it when I was still at school. And one day she put her hand on my back, and it was at the end of a massage. Again, it was another 5-minute thing. She put her hand on my back, and I felt as if, you know, the film The Green Mile?
Yes.
That, you know, when when he expels the bad energy, it comes out as this black. That was the vision I had of this black energy being drawn out of my back. And then I got this flash down my back. I remember my leg twitched, and I thought, what has just happened? This, I couldn't understand. And that day, for 6 months, well, there was a bit of a healing integration, I should say, at some point in there, but for 6 months, 8 months, no back issues at all. But on top of that, work was flowing, there wasn't the stress.
Yeah.
Everyone that came in was like my dream customer, you know, things were really in the flow. Yeah. And it was so different to the world that I had grown up in, which is, you know, the hustle. And especially where I was, it was very motivated towards structure and process, and that was never really my thing. And it just started to dawn on me that there was more to life than what I was led to believe. And it started to get me interested in things like The Secret. There was another book I read beforehand called The Cosmic Ordering Service.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, oh, my science brain is going, oh, this is NLP, but with some bigger picture thing involved.
Yeah.
But then you asked what the moment was. So these were these little moments that started to open my awareness slowly and prove to me and satisfy my scientific or my experiential brain. And then Claire came in one day and she said, Miss, I've got something to tell you. And I was, oh, what? She went, I'm moving to Australia. And I was like, no, my message. You can't. And she said, you know what? I think you should learn Reiki. And I went, really? She went, yeah, you're really spiritual. And I was like, really? Me? Spiritual? Like, I just did not see that side of me. That wasn't something that I held in my identity, although looking back, it was always there. And then this weird synchronistic series of events came where I ended up literally weeks later on my one day off one weekend off that I used to get every 3 months. I found myself in a Reiki in a lady's house called Michelle, who introduced me and opened me up and attuned me to Usui Reiki.
Beautiful.
And it was that moment that I felt the energy flow through my hands that I thought, whoa, what have I closed off in my life that I wasn't open to before because it was weird or strange or unexplained?
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing.
Yeah. And that just, I mean, there was so much that happened then, but the big thing that really changed what I was experiencing then is within 2 weeks, I remember walking into the showroom, and I walked through the door one Saturday morning, and it was like I could feel the discordant energy of me and the building, or me and the environment. And, you know, I don't want to kind of think it was really bad, because it wasn't, but I walked in and it was like my whole body was screaming at me going, you need to get out of here, you need to get out of here. And I was like, okay. I wasn't used to this level of sensitivity. I didn't understand what it was exactly I was experiencing, but it was so loud and it was so clear, and it was almost like a voice as well going, you need to get out of here. And I walked straight over to the reception desk where the weekend receptionist was there, who probably heard me 100 times, so I need to leave. And there was the local paper there. I opened it up, literally just opened it up to one page, and there was this full page advert for a job, very local, for 35-hour-a-week job when I was used to doing 50 plus
Yeah.
hours a week, with something that I could definitely do, which was around helping people to a degree. And it just, my body went, that you're getting that job. And I thought, okay. And it was a big decision for me, going from where I was, which was very glamorous, and I've got an amazing car, and the pay was good and the benefits were good and everything, to actually take this step to a job which was definitely a few pay grades down.
Yeah.
Even the level of everything, it was my head, my university degree, my all of this stuff was like, well, I'm not sure this is a sensible decision, but my body and my soul and my energy was just going, just do this. Let's do it. Absolutely,
just do it. Good for
so
you.
I went for the interview, kind of a bit like, I don't know, I knew I'd get the job, but I didn't know 100% whether I wanted it, because my head was still in there going, I'm going to go from here to here and la la la.
Yeah.
And so I'm lying in bed that night, when I'd been offered the job, and I was like, right, what do I do now? So I quit the job, what do I do? And I asked that question, like, in my head, just give me a sign, tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the radio was on, and I literally asked this question, and then the song came on, and it went, do you drive a fast car? Is it fast enough that you can fly away? You need to make a decision, leave tonight or live and die this way. And my whole body goosebumps, and I was like, leave tonight.
Oh my goodness. Well, there's your sign. I'm actually catching my breath. Isn't the universe amazing? Right? Absolutely amazing. And when we leave logic behind, it is the most beautiful thing. I did similar to you. I mean, I was head of marketing for Sky TV. Used to fly away on a Monday, fly home on a Thursday. Looked very glamorous life, but actually wasn't really a life at all, because you work all the hours. The money is amazing, but yeah, it's huge though. And I gave that up in the end without another job, and I opened a boutique by accident after I left. But I just suddenly realized, no, I actually don't need to do this anymore. My children are through university. It's not resonating. I ended up with labyrinthitis, which that was a universe saying, go and lie down, you can't do this. Yeah. But that's me. I've got goosebumps. Tracy Chapman, what a clever woman. I love that song. It's a beautiful song. I'll think of you every time I hear it now.
You see, and I think of that moment, I wonder, had that song have not come on, what my decision would have been. And this wasn't a time where I was, used to talk to the universe. Well, I was asking for parking spaces and fun stuff like that. Yeah. But this wasn't a time where I really lent into how the universe talks to us and these signs and synchronicities that happened. But I knew that I knew that this was like, you can't make this up, that song out of the thousands of songs that could have come up, and the lyrics, leave tonight or live and die this way.
And yeah, and it had to be that, and it had to be that song, and it was just perfect, wasn't it? What a message. I love this.
So then I did it. I left my job, and I didn't go into my dream job from there. There was still time, but then they sponsored me to go on an Nlp course, which was like a dream. I had the hours in the day where I wasn't working. it was almost, it felt like half. It felt like I'd halved my day because I'd get my weekends back and all of this. And I used that time to really begin my Reiki journey properly. So I did my Reiki 1 to master, you know, within 3 years, 3 or 4 years of that. Yeah, 3 years of starting, and just read everything that I could, and really just started to go, okay, well, if there is more, which the Reiki has shown me that I don't have to see it to believe it. I can feel it too. My grandma then, you know, she was still around, and I would talk to her about my experiences and her experiences, and whether the placebo effect was running in. But I always looked at the placebo effect as something very fascinating. Like, well, surely that means your brain can heal your body. And if you knew me then, and I have people, you know, still around that knew me before and know me now, what I lean into and what I trust and how I show up is so different. Because I trust, and I know that there's more than just me, and I know that there are things that I can control in the way of how I feel or how I respond or how I react or the intentions I put out there, that the universe is listening. And as long as I'm listening to the cues and to the feelings and to the signs and to the synchronicities, and we're working there in unison together, rather than, you know, this is my thing with The Secret and some of these law of attraction books, it's very much about, well, you create that path and you make it and you go for what you want. What I realized is many of the things that I thought I wanted, the glamorous car, the amazing job, actually weren't for me. They're what society told me I needed to have.
Exactly. It's leaving that conditioning behind. It's still lovely to have nice things and to want nice things and to aspire to nice things. You know about my Range Rover thing. I don't actually even know if I want one now, especially when it costs £100 to fill up my little Alfa Romeo Mito. It'd be double that. However, it is definitely... It's not, I love The Secret. I've read it, and I've read goodness knows how many books. I try to live in that way of manifestation, but it's if you're not vibrating, I think, it's got to come in with vibration. And if you are not vibrating at the right level, none of it's going to happen, is it?
Exactly, and it is a co-creation. And now, like you, I love a nice thing, you know, and we spoke before about how I manifested the car that is, all of my cars actually that I've always had have been in some way a manifestation, and I do think that it is possible, that you can't just sit there and think of a car and expect it to land on your doormat.
No.
However, there will be clues on if this is a line for you. And what I mean by that is if having the car means that you can enjoy it and that you can love it and you can get here and there in safety and whatever, and that it's not going to bring you into scarcity or whatever. If you've got money blocks and if you've got all of these other things going on, then you have to work through them before this thing can manifest and arrive.
It's all a work in progress. I'm sitting looking at my vision boards that we've talked about before, and none of these are things. They're all feelings. So that is quite nice for me. And you're gorgeous, Granny. Oh my goodness, how lucky were you to have? And that is very, very unusual. And I love your granny story. And so she was definitely a woman very ahead of her time. But there is a certain amount of women of that generation, like Jean Houston, who is in her 80s, who a lot of people haven't heard about, but she manifested. I mean, Einstein was her friend, and her mentors were incredible. And your granny would have been like that. My granny, actually, my mother's mother, had the second, so she used to say the second sight. She knew exactly. She had 13 children. Actually gave birth to 12, but one of her 13th child was her daughter's child that she had out of wedlock, who she went to the nursing home that her daughter had gone to hide having a baby, and took her home and took the baby home. You know, how beautiful. But she is, well, we are descended from this seer called the Brand Seer, and she used to sit and talk to me about second sight and following your intuition. And, you know, the minister, we're from a little village in the Black Isle in the Highlands, which is gorgeous, and we're the longest traceback family there. But she never had any shame of her second sight. She never went to church, but church came to her. All the different ministers used to come and ask her advice, you know, which was lovely. I'd have to go and make them tea and pancakes when they came to visit. But isn't it wonderful being impacted by such powerful, pure, gorgeous grandmothers who were definitely women. Well, I don't know that there were women before their time, but they would, and I think getting past the witch wound and all that burning and dulling down the strange things. Maybe your grandmother and my grandmother were going, no, we're going to embrace this and take our gift.
You know, it's interesting for me because she didn't see it or present it in a spiritual sense at all.
Right. Okay.
So my grandma was Jewish. Her mum had converted into Judaism, which to convert when my grandma was very little. So to convert in is a real kind of, you know, you really have to be strict and you know, obey the laws and do all of this stuff. And many of the teachings that she was given anyway were about this God that's a fearful God. And we'd sometimes speak about this because, you know, there were some times when I'd talk about energy more than the psychology, which is the area that she was, I suppose, more interested in. And interesting, she learnt from men. She learnt all of her stuff from men. Yeah. It surprised me once when we had this conversation about she asked me, like, aren't you scared of God? And I was like, no, not at all. Like it was a surprise. And even though I'd been subject to many of the same teachings as her, I'd always had this, I don't know, like I used to pray when I was younger, but it wasn't like, oh, please forgive me and all of this. It was just you know, thanks for blessing my whatever, you know, my parents, my family, and all of this. And I wasn't a big fan of religion growing up because I grew up and I went to Jewish school and it's all very like, you know, I don't want to say segregated, but there was a segregation there. And I was just, and I got to my teenage years and I was like, I don't think religion's for me. Yeah. But I never said God's not for me. It's like, I believe in God, but I don't believe in religion.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I get that. And I think there's so many people nowadays that do feel that God, and yeah, I agree with you. I think all these beautiful writings and you know, the Bible and the Quran and all the books on religion, it's just the way they've been interpreted by men of the cloth more often than not. And actually, if you read them, and I spent a year reading every single book on religion that I possibly, on every different religion. I was looking for answers. My oldest daughter had died. I just went into a cocoon of grief, but also of, I need to find out answers. And you know that what I found was the common threads that run through there's more similarities in every single book of religion than there is differences. And why, oh why can we not celebrate that? And they're gorgeous, and but we shouldn't be afraid of God. Ever.
No.
God is good.
And you know, my thing with that, you know, people think I'm like that I'm against religion. It's not that.
No.
It's my thing is if we can work with within a construct that is going to help us with our devotion and help us with our connection to a higher source, and it becomes expansive and helps us to become the good people, you know, that then I'm all for it. It's where it comes into separation and war and all of this stuff where it's like, oh, I'm like, for me, that's not my experience of how. And if you don't like the word God, the divine, the universe, the life force energy. And this is where Reiki is so wonderful, because Reiki isn't, you know, denominational. It's there, and it is just an energy, and everybody is just as worthy. Like anyone can learn Reiki, and everyone is just as worthy as everyone else.
They absolutely are, and I love it. And I've always known that I have had this energy within me, but I didn't have it attuned. And over the past couple of years, I just started it for myself. I did my Reiki one just for me, and I didn't think I would want to share. I'd need to share it or want to share it, but I've eventually come to Reiki Masters, which is so beautiful. You know, I've got my hands here, and I'm just talking about it. It just heats your hands. The energy's there. It's so beautiful, isn't it?
I think it's important if people are thinking of going in the Reiki journey, which I know for many people it is one of those things that can help change. That it's not about giving your power away to what this energy is, and it's not about, oh, I'm going to learn Reiki so I can do Reiki.
Yeah.
For me, Reiki, you know, it's founded on these principles of I will not anger, I will not worry. I will be honest, I will be kind, you know. And when you attune into that and you really take that on board and you take it for self, that now I have this healing power in my hands, that if something happens, whether it's emotional, physical, mental, like spiritual, that there's something that you can turn to that is a greater force beyond you, but it comes within you, is the most empowering thing ever. Like, you've always got your hands with you, right?
It's all you need.
Yeah,
it is all you need, and in so many ways, whether it's your dog. When I managed to calm Maisie down, who I haven't put outside today, and she hasn't barked. How good is that?
well done.
You know, working with my granddaughter, but also, you know, and I don't do Reiki in person. I do distance Reiki, and the power of that is phenomenal. I don't necessarily advertise that. I use it with clients. It is the most beautiful, I wouldn't even say ability. It's the most beautiful energy to be attuned to. And as you say, anyone can do it. And you are a Reiki master teacher as well, so people can come. And isn't that wonderful? You know, when you can, and that has come from that first time, and that laying on of hands on your head that filled you up. It's just.
But even that, so I did my Reiki Masters, it flagged up on my memories the other day, the day before, that it was this day in 2010 that I did my Reiki Master. Wow. So that was 2 years between the first two. And then it wasn't until 2016 that I took my master teacher. So it was a long time. And even that, we're talking about things that change the trajectory of our lives, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, between the 2010 and 2016, I'd had two of my now 3 children, boys.
Okay.
And, you know, things had changed, and I was starting to learn about my intuitive abilities, which were coming up. I had a few Reiki clients kind of spotted around here and there, and I was really into self-development. I started going to Psychic Circle and learning these mediumship mainly, and psychic abilities. And then I was in this Reiki group online on Facebook before groups were really a thing, but I was in this group.
Yeah.
And she was running a summit or something, and anyone who participated as a viewer could enter these prize draws with the speakers. So I entered all of them, obviously, and then using my new manifestation capabilities, I was like, I'm going to win the right one that's right for me. And I won one, which was an astrology reading, and I was a bit like, oh, I'm not like astrology, you know, kind of really my thing then. And anyway, I had this reading. She blew me away. I've never known anything like it. This amazing woman, Tammy. And she told me all these things, and she said to me, oh, you know, in 6 months' time, things will really expand for you. And I was thinking, yeah, it's because I'm pregnant. And in 6 months' time, probably about when I'm going to, you know.
Yeah, literally.
But I didn't say that. But she was very, it wasn't that she was predicting my future, but it was an amazing reading. Anyway, 6 months later, what we'd spoken about started to come in to fruition, and I went, okay, I'm going to message her, because I'd never met her or connected with her really, but I thought I'll message her and just tell her how life-changing her reading was.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, Melissa, I'm so glad that you got in touch with me. I've been thinking of you since we did this session, and I'd really love to read your Akashic records. And I was like, I do not know what you're talking about. But again, my body tingled, and I knew how amazing, you know, I'd experienced how amazing Tammy is. So I was like, okay, let's give it a go. And I was going to give her a reading in return as a thank you. Anyway, so we arranged this thing. I had no idea what to expect. I don't know. I didn't expect much really. But she does it different to how I do. But she opened my records. First thing I felt, it was almost like I'd been kicked in the chest by a horse. And I was like, whoa. And she was like, tell me what's happening. So I'm like, I feel like I've been kicked in the chest by a horse. She was like, okay. And she was asking me questions. She was pulling energy out. She was doing all this stuff. And actually what was happening was I was reading my records under her guidance. Because she kept saying to me, I didn't realize, but she kept saying, you know, what's happening now? What's going on? Ask about this, blah, blah, blah. And we had this mammoth 2.5-hour session with clearing all this stuff. I was seeing all of these things of persecution and of, you know, being confined. And there was moments where I was like, that's why I'm scared of this, or that's why I, you know, behave this way in these circumstances. Yeah. And then she said to me, you go and find a life where you were a teacher. And I was like, oh, what? I'm not a teacher. Like, you know, my vision of a teacher is a teacher at school or whatever. Yeah. And anyway, so we discovered this life, and there was a few that came up. And what struck me was how rewarding it was. And the people that I'd helped, and I was a teacher for children in somewhere far away. But what came to me was the people that I taught, the children that I taught, had come to me and said, thank you for how much I changed their lives. And I was like, whoa, you know, that got me. And I don't know, that awakened something in me then, but I didn't know. It was such a small part of this massive experience I'd had. Anyway, I woke up, it must have been days or a week later. I woke up like, I think I'm ready to do my Reiki teacher course now. Not linking it. I hadn't, still not linked this at this point. contacted this lady. Oh no, I just went on Google, and then in that week, people are going, "Oh, do you know this woman?" I was like, "No." And I've had 3 people ask me if I knew this woman. I was like, oh, "I've got to look this woman up."
Yeah.
Looked her up. "Oh yeah, I'm running a Reiki teacher where you can just do the teacher aspect of it." And it was like, again, on the day I was free, like really local, booked in, amazing. And then a friend of mine said to me, "I want you to teach me Reiki." And I was
And there it is.
I was 8 months pregnant.
Yeah.
And so I taught my first Reiki class when I was actually 8.5 months pregnant, teaching my first Reiki class. And that then started the whole Akashic thing started from there.
Amazing. What a story. And everything is interlinked, and the path that life takes you on is so beautiful, or that has taken you on specifically. But everyone, if they listen, even if they don't realize, I actually have had tingles and goosebumps so many times during this beautiful, beautiful chat with you, you wonderful, wonderful woman. And I thank you so, so very much. And I will be inviting you back if you will come, Melissa. It will be amazing. I could actually talk to you all day long. One day we'll do that. We'll meet up and sit and talk all day long. But
I look forward to that.
Oh, so do I. But for now, my darling, thank you so, so much for joining me. Take care.
Thank you, Sue.